This is the Bill Press Show.
It is the Bill Press Show. Happy holidays, everybody. We are not here live. We put this on tape just for you to enjoy while we are enjoying our holiday break, which we hope that you are having a great season as well. Around the holidays, we like to cut loose a little bit. We talk about a lot of very serious stuff here on the show. And just as often as we can, we like to bring in our buddy, Greg Engert. He is with the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, the beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, and he runs my favorite brewery in Washington, D.C., Bluejacket. It's right here in Washington, D.C., in the Navy Yard neighborhood. Greg, good to see you.
Good to see you too, bud.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
This is a great tradition that we have here on the show now, where Greg comes in and he talks to us about seasonal beers. And this season, of course, being Christmas, we're going to talk about Christmas beers.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, so this year, normally I bring in kind of weirder beers, I think, than I did this year. I wanted to be feeling a little bit more classic. Craft beer, you know, there's over 7,000 breweries in the U.S. today, which is just crazy. New ones seem to open every day. Everyone's kind of pushing the envelope with lots of hazy IPA, fruited sours, pastry stouts, and things like that. So I feel like the industry's kind of starting now to turn back towards some of the classics.
Yeah.
And one that I didn't bring that everybody should drink as much as possible over the next few weeks is Sierra Nevada Celebration Ale.
Oh,
One of the greatest beers of all time.
I've had 5 this morning.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just a prep.
You know, so I think this is a cool time when the shelves are not just replete with those 3 styles I mentioned. We actually do see classic beers coming back around, and it's a good opportunity to drink Belgian beer, for instance, that maybe you've gotten away from over the last few years and things like that. But having said all that, of course, I had to bring an IPA to start. And this is from Stone.
I want to say really quick. So Joe Piacenza from Morning Consult is here. Jack Jenkins from Religion News Service, 2 friends of the show, are in here as well. They are beer drinkers, but as we were discussing, not a huge IPA fan.
Not a huge IPA fan. I'm hoping you can convert me a little bit.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting.
This is the guy to do it. Okay. I was not a huge IPA fan, and I think that there's been a lot of changes in terms of how IPAs are made in recent years, but also you just got to drink the right IPA.
Yeah,
right.
I meanwhile am an IPA fan, which surprises nobody.
You know, it is funny because IPAs have long been the the leader for the craft beer movement. They're the style that people have long brewed the most and drank the most. But over the past 3 or 4 years, the style has certainly changed a little bit. So in the old days, IPAs were known for being very, very bitter. Hops are known more for their bitterness rather than their flavor profile, which is unfortunate. They always packed a lot of flavor. But recently, brewers have been trying to figure out a way to get people like Joe to drink IPA. They figure, like, if most people like IPA, why shouldn't we try to figure out a way that everyone can? So they kind of took the bitterness out of the beer and intensified the fruit-driven aromatics of the beer. And that's what the hazy IPA style is. This is a little bit different. This is a brute IPA, which is even more newfangled. I've
seen more and more of these.
Of this, So this is like kind of the new thing. Some people say like, oh, will this, supplant hazy IPA? I don't think so at all. It's clearly not hazy. It's called a brute IPA, and it's from Stone Brewing Company. Started in Escondido. They have a great brewery down in Richmond as well, and one in Berlin. Okay. So they're an incredible operation that's worldwide now. A brewed IPA is one that's supposed to be very aromatic and yet bone dry. Like champagne and very effervescent.
That's it. That was the first thing I was going to say. This is just
what
completely dry.
I like it.
It's delicious.
It's very delicious, and you can see that this one has more bitterness than most because Stone is a West Coast brewery, first and foremost, and they make West Coast IPAs first and foremost, and those are the ones that tend to be more kind of bitter on the palate. So this has less bitterness than I think a lot of their beers do, but it's still there and still prevalent. I wouldn't say this is dank. It doesn't smell like weed. It smells more like, it
smells a little bit like
piney.
Weed.
Yeah, it's a little resinous.
I guess there. I see it.
But it's got a lot more like of that fruit, like tangerine, citrus quality.
It's not as most IPAs. The reason that I'm turned off by them is that they're really, 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 really hoppy.
Right.
And this one is just a little bit more subtle.
It's soft. It's
nice.
more subtle. It's softer, and I think that's kind of where things have gone because bitterness is polarizing.
Yeah.
People love it, but then people also hate it. I mean, more people drink it bitter things today than they used to. Like Fernet Branca has become the bartender's drink, right?
It's the bartender's shot.
It used to be Grand Marnier, so
right.
orange sweet now to like bitter wormwood. But it's a polarizing flavor. So if you can find the the kind of softer, nuanced taste that in IPA, kind of concentrate on those and get rid of some of that bitterness, you find that now it's like a style that's even more prevalent than it was before.
How alcoholic is this?
This is actually strong. This is 9.4%.
But
well hidden, obviously. You in the vest, right? Exactly.
No, that's a dangerous beer right there.
It tastes kind of like a chugging beer.
So let me tell you a little bit about
I was having
about
the same thing.
the Enjoy By series. It's very cool. So freshness is key when it comes to most beer styles, kind of like wine. I mean, there's very few wines that you should be laying down for extended periods of time. Definitely the same with beer. Imperial stouts, Belgian strong ales, things that are strong and dark can lay down and develop really nicely over time. Hoppy beers and crisp, refreshing beers should be drank as soon as possible. That's one of the best things about tap rooms like Bluejacket is you go in there and Lost Weekend cans that we have, Citra IPA, are they're like 5 days old at all times.
I just want to say again. Probably my favorite beer. Probably my favorite beer, full stop. Last weekend, the beer that you all make.
And that's even less bitter than this beer.
So if I walk into a tap room or any bar and they have something on tap, they have a variety of beers. It's smartest to go with something that's an IPA because that's going to taste better. And I could get like a brown ale in a can or in a bottle, and that would taste about the same.
I would say more so like first off, just make sure you know what tap room you're in because there's a lot of good. 7,000 breweries, a lot of breweries. There's a lot of good ones and there's a lot of bad ones. So like some of them just don't go in. But if you go into a reputable brewery, I would say maybe try for a flavor that you couldn't reliably get on a Harris Teeter shelf or something like that. I think that's a cool idea. But IPAs, anything hoppy and anything crisp and refreshing like lagers and things like that should be fresh.
Is this why the can culture, the group of people who would like go to an obscure brewery somewhere and line up to get the fresh cans of IPAs? Is that the premise there? Is that it's best drinking fresh? Like that's why they're there?
I think it started there, and and that's the thing. I mean, you go to some of these grocery stores, like they have IPAs on the shelf that are 90 days old, like that's not good. Even though those are built to last more than say like a hazy IPA in a can, it started with that. So people started going to try to get freshness. The can thing, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that has happened. I think the 16-ounce can photographs really well. It looks awesome on Instagram. I mean, that really has a ton to do with that. And there's line culture. It's a place where, I mean, honestly, there's lots of like dads and moms that on the weekends, exactly,
guilty as charged.
We'll go into getting a line because it's a way to like I'm just picking up some beer, and like people will share beers in line whether it's legal or not. You hang out and kind of like it's interesting. Line culture, we could do a whole show on that.
That's a whole separate show.
So when you say line culture, you're talking about people waiting in line.
Yeah, and there's tons of sociology behind it too. Like think of restaurants we have in DC, like Bad Saint and Rose's Luxury, where they don't have reservations, although they're starting to add them now, or Himitsu, where you can't reserve. So the best you can do is somehow not work past the 3 o'clock,
right,
and go and wait in line and try to get in on that first turn at 5:30.
I want to ask you this about this particular beer and this particular style, because I've seen more and more brute IPAs out there. And to be perfectly honest, this is the first one that I have had of the brute IPAs. How does it get that distinction of a brute IPA? What sets it apart?
So what sets it apart is the dryness. And so basically, this beer starts off with a bunch of sugar, as all beers do. That's original gravity. The final gravity is how much sugar remains in the beer, and through those two numbers, we can calculate alcohol by volume or by weight. And this beer has basically no sugar left in it. It's completely fermented dry, which is a feat in of itself because yeast has trouble converting all of the different sugars and starches that come through from barley. So there's probably some corn and rice in here with more simple sugars, but then we add a separate enzyme, amyloglucosidase, which breaks down the more complex sugars even further into simple sugars so that the yeast has no trouble kind of cleaning it out. And so that's what it is. It's an extra enzyme added, gets it down, gets it bone dry, and now you're talking like champagne, right? Like brute champagne, bubbles, clean, refreshing, bright. And then, Enjoy By this is the thing they're saying, don't drink this beer after the 1st of next year. They're taking a huge gamble, and they have been for a long time, saying we believe in freshness so much that we're going to actually put like an Enjoy By date right up front.
Oh,
We're not
yeah,
gonna hide
it's
some
it's
weird
literally
code.
like the logo
Yeah.
is the Enjoy
It's the
by
code,
ID.
yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
in the old days, brewers would put like these weird codes that you had to like,
Decipher.
understand and like dissect so that you could figure out just how old this shit was. Now it's they wrote it right on there, and it makes sense that they did a brewed IPA for New Year's Enjoy by, because of course that's the time when everybody breaks out the sparkling wine and things like that. So
Did I tell you this guy had the
love
biggest
that.
beer brain ever? Like, he knows
Seriously,
exactly what he's
this is
talking about.
great.
And I assume this is probably going to be a recurring theme given the kinds of beers we're about to drink. But this reminds me of like a mountain, like the dryness makes it truly a winter beer to me. To
Yeah.
the point where it feels like I'm in like a mountain brewery in the Appalachians, like there's snow outside, just drinking this
it's
wine.
Alpine, yeah.
There it is.
Well,
It
yeah,
is.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good description. I agree.
It's a cool beer. It's a great brewery. They've been doing these Enjoy Bys for a long time, and now they're starting to. It used to be just like a standard kind of West Coast big burly bitter double IPA. And then they started doing some haze. I think they've done like a black IPA version. Every now they've done some with fruits, so they're kind of experimenting with the same base recipe. And then this is the first time they've done the brewed IPA, which is very, very, very cool. Just to have some variety for the season too. Not that we need more IPAs, but if you're hosting a holiday tasting or a party, and there are some people who are going to come over and all they want is IPAs from cans.
Yeah.
You got it.
Got it.
But also, don't be obnoxious and drink only IPAs from cans.
Yeah.
Expand your horizons a little bit. I like an IPA from a can. I like all kinds of stuff.
I would say, and on that note too, please pour. This has gotten away from this can culture, which I love, support, and frankly contribute to at Bluejacket.
Sure.
Our brewery, we can beers weekly, super fresh, 16-ounce cans, 4-packs. We love canned beer. However, if you have canned beer, please don't drink it out of the can if you can. I mean, I get it, like if you're on the road or like you're camping or something like that.
You're driving.
No, like tailgating or something like that. You can don't drink and drive. Of course. That's not responsible.
Obviously, that was a joke.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, but, if you can, even if it's from cup or from glass, please drink. That's where you can actually access the aromas, which is 99.9% of taste. It's been something I've struggled to get people to do. When I first started in this business over 15 years ago, people would order a bottle or can, and I would try to go to pour it, and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna pour it in a glass," and they'd be like, "It comes in a glass." So that's what I was doing back then. So we moved really towards, trying to say like, we're not trying to be haughty about this, but please enjoy beer from glass, just like you would a wine or a spirit.
Exactly.
And it's now the beer's gotten so big, this can thing is kind of moving the needle the other way. So
Yeah.
Well, I drink my wine out of the bottle.
I drink my wine
With
with
a straw.
As long as you can tell me that, then you can drink beer from can all day long.
Totally straw.
Yeah. All right, what else we have?
All right, so
Next.
next we're gonna move to a really amazing Belgian brewery called Didola, which means the Mad Brewers.
Nice.
This
I
is a
already
really
like
cool
it.
Yeah, let me do
brewery
it.
from
There we go.
Essen, which is in West Flanders near Bruges.
Ooh.
And the brewery itself, the buildings are from the early 19th century. 3 generations brewed at the brewery until like 1980. And then it was about to go out of business, like so many breweries. In Belgium.
Opa.
There we go.
And
It's all right.
this is
You can tell it's Christmas because it has a snowman on the
exactly
label.
yeah. And Chris Hertelier, who is the owner and brewer at the brewery, is an amazing artist. So if you look at any of the Didola labels or their website, you will see this really cool. Sorry.
I think we're getting paper towels. It's fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
You'll
a good
see this
time.
really amazing art beer.
We're already having a good
Thank
time
you.
here. Don't worry about that.
So what's the style here?
This is a strong.
I like it already.
A strong ale. It's about 12% alcohol.
Wow.
And
Hey, all right.
They
Yowza.
unlike a lot of Belgian strong ales, this one's not pitch black or dark in color. It's a little bit bright and light.
It's a beautiful beer.
Oh, I
It really
I mean,
love
that is
this.
beautiful to look at.
It has they brew it
God, this is
with
good.
a bunch of candy sugar,
Whoa.
so that it like ferments. When you add candy sugar to beer, it's not to make it necessarily sweeter; it's to increase the alcohol.
Right.
What's candy sugar versus
Just like simple sugar,
Oh.
or like just like a simple sugar that they
Okay.
use, but
Yeah.
made for brewing. It's typically liquefied.
How good is that?
That is a
So
dangerous
it's like
beer.
it's 12%, and it's big and bold. It starts off kind of sweet, malty, caramel toffee toast, but then it also finishes dry.
Yeah.
Because of that fermentation. So this isn't 100% fully fermented, but or it's fully attenuated. There is some sugar left, but it's not overwhelming. It's not flabby. It's not too sweet. The alcohol is there, but it mingles with the malt character, so it's not like overwhelming. It's certainly not hot. We're not feeling it down here.
No.
And like all great Belgian beers, it has a really impactful and complex bouquet, like lots of mixed fruits. There's it's just an incredible beer. So it even has a little bit of like an earthy funk to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say there is some funk to it, and a lot of times you see something with such a high alcohol level like that, and it does burn.
Yeah.
And this doesn't.
And this is not burn at all.
so
It's
weird.
funky, but it's is it delicious?
Really, really cool. Yeah.
I love sour beers, and this is just.
There's a little bit of that.
Oh,
yeah.
it's great. Yeah.
So yeah, they do like a mixed fermentation on these beers where they'll have Saccharomyces, which is like the ale yeast. That provides all that fruit, and then there tends to be, because it's a small, old school brewery they're using 19th century brewing equipment in this little town of 2,000 people in Belgium, in the West. So like, it's kind of rustic, even at this strength, there is some kind of rustic complexity to it you wouldn't get just by brewing on brand new stainless steel machinery and things like that. So it's very, very cool. And Chris, like I said, is an artist. He took over the brewery in 1980. He was a home brewer and wanted to salvage this incredible old brewery, didn't want it to go the way of so many little breweries in Belgium, and started brewing. And they make 1,000 barrels a year, which is the equivalent of about 2,000 kegs.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, we do twice as much of that at Bluejacket.
Wow.
This is such a delicious beer.
It's
I
really delicious.
adore this beer.
And this feels like a holiday beer, like that. You said it has this like you would have like peppermint, crackle or whatever with this, and then you drink this and just pass out. Like this would just be like a bunch of sugar in your system. Like exactly.
Yeah.
This is great.
It's taken a lot
really cool.
of will not to down that whole glass.
Go for it. Have a ball. So it's the holidays.
Yeah.
You can get away with that stuff here.
And interestingly too, Dodola, I think this is based on, just economics. They've always sold their beer in, these 11.2 ounce or 330 milliliter bottles. They only do large 750 formats for a very few of their like barrel aged beers, and mostly that stays in Belgium. When they export bottles, it's always small format, which is interesting, right? It means that you don't have to drink one of these by yourself.
Right.
You can actually have this and just like taste it a little bit, and it makes it like for a more approachable price point. You don't have to like go all in on. You can get like a small amount of it. So I think it's kind of cool.
I love that.
The thing about this beer, I think, the best way that I could categorize it is it's very refreshing, which I don't always think about when I think about these heavier holiday beers. Like I could, after cutting the grass, come in and drink one of these.
Yeah.
And it's very refreshing that way.
Yeah. That is it. I think the best Belgian beers are this pure combination of like power and finesse. So you get like this huge intensity in the nose, but you're right, like the body is lean. It's not overwhelming. It's not, you can drink it and not sip it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is propelled by bottle conditioning. So in a similar way as champagne is bottle conditioned, what they'll do here is once the yeast is done fermenting the beer out and it's consumed all the sugars it's going to consume, they will dose each bottle or the tank that's going into the bottle with some more sugar and another yeast that's very active. And so then when it goes into the bottle, they'll keep it warm and leave it in a warm room for 6 to 8 weeks typically, where a fermentation will kick off again in the bottle, and you'll get natural carbonation that's very like bright and lively and creamy on the palate, rather than just injecting it with CO2 like you would with like a soda gun or something like that. Right. It's not as sharp. Like if you ever drink industrial lager, it tastes really kind of like the bubbles are big and sharp. And that's not here. This is finesse. It's creamy, effervescence, and it contributes to that great drinkability.
That's kind of homebrewing style too, right? And how a lot of homebrewers get carbonation in there.
Yeah, it can be for sure. Yeah. It's just not as quick. So I think some homebrewers, are just like carb it real quick and then choke it down.
Well, this is delicious.
Yeah,
this was a delicious beer. I love that beer.
My favorite so far.
Let me ask you a question. I know we're going to move down the line here a little bit on beers, because I'm not a huge fan of stouts and porters out of season. Like I will drink a stout and a porter only when it's winter. What is the difference between a stout and a porter?
So that difference has been blurred. The line has been blurred over time. But it's in the old days, porter was a style of beer that was actually, it was dark in color, but would typically be a blend of aged beer and fresh beer, and so it would have some acidity to it, like the way this has a touch of acidity. That's what it used to be, but it was always on the darker spectrum. And stout used to be just a designation for a stronger version of any style of beer. So you could have like a stout porter, you could have a stout pale ale. In the same way that interesting, like mild is now something that we apply to a beer that's lower in alcohol, and like maybe we think of it as milder. In the old days used to mean something that was just served fresh rather than something that was aged. So there's been a lot of like changes in terminology over time. So stout porter, which used to be the stronger version of a dark beer, over time people didn't want acidity anymore, so they stopped blending in aged beer. So it's cleaner, but still dark and roasty. And at that point, stout, being the stronger version of porter, was off. Was kind of sold more and requested more. So it just became its own kind of style.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah.
But today, I think that what the distinction should be, although I can give you 10 examples of a stout that doesn't follow this and 10 of a porter that doesn't either, stouts tend to use more heavily roasted barley. So they tend to be a little bit more dry, heavily roasted and bitter. I would say a stout is more like espresso and a porter is more like latte.
Oh,
in that respect.
Interesting.
But again, there's lots of stouts that don't follow that rule. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, what else do we have here?
Right. And actually, well, you know what? Because we just talked about stouts. We'll do the Bluejacket beer here. This is called Kingdom. 2018. We just released it. We do a bottle club. Tell us about this bottle club.
Yeah,
and we do still have some spaces left. It's a pretty exclusive club. It's called the Officers Club, and it's pricey, but when you buy into it, you get a dozen bottles, so 6 different releases, 2 bottles of each of rare beer that nobody else gets. And these are all barrel aged beers. A lot of them are barrel aged stouts. Some are and then we have a lot of sour ales and things like that. So it's very, very, very cool. We do a couple of big members-only parties for the club members. We just did one last weekend. It's an amazing way to taste some beers that we're really proud of and can only make in very, very, very small amounts.
I love a beer that looks like motor oil when it's cold out.
This is a great looking.
Yeah, this is
it's heavy, like in the hand.
Yeah. No, this definitely feels heavier than the other beers that you've
getting a
poured.
workout.
There's volume to this.
Very dark.
And back to what I was saying before about gravities, like this one starts at over 30 Plato, which is incredibly high. Finishes though at like 11 Plato. So there's still a ton of sugar left in this beer, and that's what gives it so much mouthfeel and richness. It is a Imperial Stout's 13% alcohol.
Okay.
It's been aged in a host.
You're really pulling out the double digits.
I'm ready to go fight somebody.
Oh man.
I realize that now. That I probably should have mixed something else.
None of them taste that way. They're all dangerous.
Yeah,
they're all like you don't feel the back
point,
alcohol in your chest. It's like
So this is a blend of different bourbon barrels. We have a big barrel aging program. So we'll take a base stout like this and put it in lots of different barrels, and then we'll start tasting them and blending them and seeing which ones work with which ingredients.
That's so good.
This one started its life as an Imperial Stout aged in Buffalo Trace barrels, George Dickel rye barrels, and Woodford Reserve barrels.
It's lit.
Blend it up.
It's lit.
And then we finished it with cocoa nibs, and vanilla beans, and then coconut.
Wow,
It is so
coconut.
good.
Now that I say it,
is
you'll smell it.
this
It
is
smells like a
so
Mounds bar.
holiday. This is my drink in front of a fireplace and pass out beer
yeah,
with
a goblet of this.
like
that is
maybe some
I will say
vanilla
that-
ice cream on the side. Oh yeah, that'd be great.
The one thing about it is that as I brought it in,
Just put ice cream in it. Just have like a float of
it,
this.
it came up to
genius.
temp well, but it's a little bit cold right now. So that's the only thing I would say. This is typically even better at
And
like
this
room
is a
temp.
stout.
really.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is an Imperial
Okay, this is
Stout.
Imperial Stout.
But we call it it's kind of a sweet stout because of how much residual sugar's in it, but how much vanilla and coconut that we add to it to kind of round it out and make it very pastry dessert like.
Yes.
And go
love
so
it.
great with vanilla ice cream and
I
things like
love
that.
it. I'm not a big sweet beer or even sweet like drink person. I don't like sweet cocktails.
good
But
is
this
that?
is amazing.
So
this is-
good.
It's good.
Oh, good.
This is delicious.
This is amazing.
I think this it's not a sweet stout, but this is a perfect dessert beer.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Like skip dessert and have this.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
totally. It's a really cool cool beer, and we love making them. So the bottle club that we do is one of the ways to get some of these beers. Although we do release some others to the general public as well.
Question.
Yeah, could anyone buy this? Right
We
now?
actually
Or do you
sold a
need to
very
be-
limited amount of this
Okay.
at the brewery. I think we may have a few bottles left. But yeah.
Gotcha. Noted.
Yes,
Noted.
noted.
Oh, you're gonna have to get there before I do.
Heavily noted.
So do these take longer to brew than the average, like, say, IPA, or is it like a different kind of process? I'm curious about.
It's interesting to brew this beer. We boil it for about 4 hours. A typical boil for a beer is 60 minutes.
Oh,
to an
wow.
hour.
Okay.
This one we do at 4 hours because the longer you boil it, the more you intensify the liquid.
Oh, no
'cause you're
kidding.
Boiling off water. So if you want to get big, rich flavors, one of the ways we do that is by a long boil. So we do add some time there. Also, when you do that, though, you're shrinking the size of the beer. So typically we'll brew 2 batches to make a full batch.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of a longer process.
Just because of
Fermentation,
evaporation.
yeah, it just keeps going. And then fermentation takes longer because the yeast has got to just eat more sugar and go up. So that's probably, a couple weeks of fermentation versus normal, like, week. And then, even if we wanted to serve this beer without a barrel aging treatment, we would have to give it, in my opinion, 6 to 8 weeks in tank, just so all those big flavors could mellow and it would become smoother and more rounded. So yeah, it takes a lot longer to make. But in this case, I mean, this beer sat in bourbon barrels for like 9 months.
Wow.
So yeah, so we brewed this last year, and it takes even longer.
It's a masterpiece.
It's
Which is
amazing.
fun. And I think that, this is one thing I would say. That's a great question. And I think a lot of times we take, myself included, beer for granted.
Yeah.
You see something on the shelves and because, my dream 15 years ago was that craft beer would one day be ubiquitous. And now we've got what we want. But the trade-off is that we kind of take it for granted. So if you're like walking down the Whole Foods aisle and there's barrel-aged stouts aplenty, you're just kind of like, I've had that one. Dude, like that brewer just spent 3 good years on that beer. They're very proud of it. There's 10 bottles in the city.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it becomes less special in some ways. So it's a good reminder to think about these things rather than just, ticking them off on Untapped or
But
something.
a beer like this, which has so many different moving parts to it, right? And it took so long to get to this point in the bottle. You can tell. You can really tell.
definitely.
I mean, you could absolutely tell that
There's
there was a
levels.
lot of effort that went into this beer.
Totally.
This isn't just a one-off, you
Right.
know.
And you could not create the flavors. That's the point about craft brewing in general. Anything craft based is that it's a flavor first mentality. Rather, when faced with the choice of should I do this, this, and this, and make this much money, and not really care about the flavor, or do that, and that, and maybe not make any money, but create something that's beautiful, you go with the latter over the former.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
And so,
The
and what you
art.
find as you chase that path is that you get flavors in this beer we could not create but for this year-long maturation and this just hundreds of pounds of coconut that we added to it. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
cost and time, but to get something that you could not create otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, this is just such a good beer.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Okay, I think we have one more on the list.
One more.
Before I pass out.
Now, I love the idea of having a lot of stouts, especially in the winter, and I'd love for DC to replicate something that I know happens in Boulder, because I lived in Boulder for a little bit, which is Stout Month. So every February, all the breweries there, and you can't throw a dead cat without hitting a brewery.
Right.
Yeah,
in
sure.
that city. They put up 4 or 5 stouts, where it's just it's a good saying, right? It's a great saying.
I throw a lot of dead cats, so I
A lot
appreciate
of
it.
dead
Right?
cats. They have maybe 4 or 5 new stouts every February.
Incredible.
It's amazing. And as someone who really loves dark, heavy
Boulder
beers,
has been making amazing beer for a long time.
Yeah.
Avery Brewing
Yeah.
Company. Is,
Oh, they're great.
Yeah, they're
Yep,
delicious.
wonderful.
Favorite of
Them.
There you go.
Thank you. No, what is this one?
So this is St. Bernardus Christmas Ale.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
probably the most
Truly a Christmas ale.
right. available of the beers that I brought today.
Ooh.
And also you can see right away it's got the same bottle conditioning. That's why it was also corked and caged.
Yeah.
But you see that creamy effervescence. Very, very cool. And this is more of a classic, what you think of when you think of Belgian holiday beers.
Right.
Dark,
I'm glad we brought-
10%,
Yeah, I'm glad we brought the alcohol down a little bit.
Yeah,
It's only 10%.
Oh my
gentle on the
I see it's an Abbey Ale, so
Yeah.
obviously I'm going to notice that part.
Abbey Ale, which
There we
means
go.
it's not made by monks, but but it wants to.
It's in the style of
See,
that.
Jack, we brought you in purely. Jack writes for the Religion News Service. This is made by monks. So
Exactly.
Always a
No,
religion
it's a
angle.
whole style of beer that any number of monks and
yeah.
religious orders had been working on for a long time because it was praying and making beer. Apparently,
That's a delicious beer.
Yeah, and yes,
Delicious beer.
Oh, yeah, that's
Isn't that
divine.
good?
Yeah.
It's light.
and what's really cool is a lot of holiday beers are spiced. That's kind of how they've been differentiated. Whether it's with orange peel or coriander or cinnamon or ginger, all sorts of things. This is not spiced at all. The flavors that are in this beer come from the malt, the hops, and the yeast that's employed.
Wow.
I
So
love
it is
that.
spicy. I mean, it smells like minty. It smells peppery.
Yeah. I mean, it does have the spiciness to it that you were talking about, but it's not like a punch to the head.
It has, you can tell it's generated. It's phenol character generated from the fermentation, but you get a lot of ester too, like the fruity character. It's raisins, it's plums, it's a little bit of like overripe banana, but it's also apricot. And that's what's cool about it. It's like dark beer, but has a lot of bright flavors to it.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Full and rich on the palate. Again, finishing dry without being bitter. Just an amazing beer that it's just too easy to drink. It's so silky and smooth and Moorish. You just want to keep going.
It is
back
definitely
to
too
it.
easy. To
Yeah,
drink.
this
It's definitely
is a
too
running
easy to
theme
drink.
today.
Stark
This is-
contrast to the stout, though.
Yeah, it's a very different
terms of-
thing. Yeah,
yeah.
and this is almost like English, fruit cake in a glass. Whereas this.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
I also love the quote on the bottle, bringing heavenly nectar within reach.
Love heavenly
support
nectar.
I love Heavenly Nectar.
Heavenly nectar.
I love Heavenly Nectar.
This brewery's got an amazing history to it, and they're one of the best breweries in Belgium, and a brewery that
This is
like
delicious.
like Sierra Nevada, which I mentioned before. The cool thing about craft beer is that you can grow and maintain quality and craft, right? Sierra Nevada produces 1 million barrels a year, but that Celebration Ale is just as good as it did back in the mid '80s when they introduced it. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Same with these guys. They're doing about 40,000 hectoliters, which is similar to barrels, and that's big for a Belgian brewery. But the beer tastes just as great as it always has. So they're able to make more, get it to more people, and yet still have these incredible, complex, craft-driven flavors.
How could you say no to this monk with a Santa hat on? I mean, how could you
Quite
possibly
a cute label.
not buy into the Christmas spirit with that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It screams Christmas.
So this brewery too, really cool history. So monastic brewing as we know it in Belgium today, there's 6 brewers. Chimay is probably the most well known.
Sure.
But Westmalle was the first to kind of revive brewing by monks in Belgium shortly before Belgium even became a country in the mid 19th century. So a lot of Catholic monks fled France during the Napoleonic Wars, settled under Dutch protection in what would become Belgium, and so they started brewing again at that point. So this is 19th century stuff. Westfaletteren, which is the tiniest little monastic brewery in the world, you have to go to the monastery to get their beer, was brewing until the Second World War, and afterwards they were like, we want to spend more time praying and less time supporting ourselves through commercial endeavors.
Same.
Exactly.
Same.
And so they outsourced their brewing to a brand new brewery that used to be a cheesemaker and still is, called St. Bernardus. This is 1946. For the next 46 years, St. Bernardus brewed all of the monastic beer under contract for the monks. But then in the early 90s, people really started to get into like beers like Chimay and Rochefort.
Right.
And so the Trappist monks, the sect from the Benedictines through Cistercians, you know what I'm talking about?
Dude, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
I love Greg.
Yeah.
So the Trappists created this insignia to start protecting their beer and saying like it's a special thing. And then they took it back. So they said you guys can't brew Westfaletteren beer anymore because you're not Trappist monks. We're going to brew it again. And the St. Bernardus was like, that's fine, but we're going to continue to brew the beer just under a different name. So if you see like St. Bernardus Act
Fascinating.
12, which is all over the place, that used to be the Westfaletteren 12 beer. This is the monastic beer produced by secular people, but in that tradition, this beer was produced for the first time, the Christmas Ale, in 2007. So it's still like kind of relatively new for them.
Yeah.
And it's just remarkable. It only comes out once a year, and it's delicious.
Y'all
Well-
thought we were just going to talk about, how delicious the beer was, but what, like that.
History lesson.
You just gave me a pitch to give my editor. Like that.
There you go.
There you
I
go.
feel like you should go on
We're
drunk
making
history.
connections here. We're making connections here. Well, look, whether or not you're drinking beer over the holiday season, or whether or not you just want to give your friends and family a history lesson while they are over for the holidays, we've got you covered here on the Bill Press Show. Greg Engert, if you're anywhere near Washington D.C., come to visit Greg at Bluejacket, his great brewery here in town. Also, thank you very much,
Or
Greg.
Church Key.
Or Church Key,
Yeah,
or
which
any of
is
the other
gonna-
great neighborhood
It's
restaurant
gonna be
groups.
10 years old next year.
No way.
One of the best beer bars of the nation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Church Key. Also, Joe Piacenza for Morning Consult, Jack Jenkins for the Religion News Service. Thank you all so very much for being here. Have a very, very, very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday, and we'll see you again with more programming over this Christmas week.